Okay, you're listening to Lore Friendly. Alice Bell is sick this week, so we wish her all the best. But in her place this week is Unoctium. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
Doing the same, more or less. The life of a basement dweller does not change from day to
Hold
day.
on. Is that if you're living at a road level? Are you still a basement dweller?
Pretty much, I guess. It's a lifestyle. It's not a
Ah,
physical description. It's more of a lifestyle choice. It's just,
I mean, like, surely that concept gets challenged if you're like, say, in the attic or something like that, or you're in full view of the public
yeah.
from your room.
I'm not in an actual basement. It's just more of just style choice and like how you live, from day to day. But anyways, enough about me.
Fair enough.
Couple things I'm gonna talk about this week on this week's episode. We're gonna talk about Star Trek Discovery, the first half season finale, which was a couple days ago, and also a bit of news. Let's start with that. Amazon has bought the rights to have a Lord of the Rings TV show, which is gonna air who knows when, because they haven't done anything. Apparently, they haven't picked writers, directors, or anything. They don't even have a story. They just bought the rights for about 200 million. So,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's gonna be any good, or I mean, no? Even though we know nothing at this point.
Well, the first thing you're going to ask, what they're going to adapt, or what are they going to create?
I
Because
don't think they're gonna adapt. I think it's gonna be new, right? It's just gonna be a prequel.
the problem is every time I see them, excuse me, every time I see someone make fan fiction of Lord of the Rings, it's awful. Um, and I mean, I'm really not trying to be like a snob about this, but like it really couldn't be more or less Lord of the Rings if they tried. So like there's those two games, right? And I'm not again computer games. Like obviously that's very far from television, but the Lord of the Shadow Middle Earth Shadow of War or something or other. I like to watch these games on Let's Plays, and they have nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. Like they're just a sort of they're an action game with Lord of the Rings skin, and the spider Shelob is apparently some seductive shapeshifter or something like that, or it generally just it has a sort of general grasp of the history, but it completely departs when they ever feel necessary. And when like J.R.R. Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings, he generally had a theme. Like I'd at least like to think so. Like about the Lord of the Ring, obviously. So at the first time you're gonna ask, what was it going to be about? So,
Yeah. I mean, it really starts from the top, right? Like when you compare something like Star Wars or Lucasfilm, they got their hands on everything involved with that. Like anything you want to make that involves Star Wars, their imprint is there, right? They want to make sure it has a certain tone, a certain feel that is sort of mirrors what George Lucas made or his creation. Where here in this case we have sort of sight unseen, no script, no plan, no nothing. It's just a suitcase full of money, and the Tolkien estate's all, oh sure, do what you want.
that's a shame because I wonder if that guy's dead. His son, probably
Um,
not, but like he's probably like decrepit,
well,
and
because
his
he
son is like
finished,
yeah,
like J.R. Tolkien's son. What was it, Christopher Tolkien? He's the
yeah,
one who
yeah.
finished this, like, what's it called, the Silmarillion.
He has
Apologies if
finished
I
it. Yeah,
pronounced that wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, he was the one who finished it out of like pieces of Tolkien's original manuscripts and notes, right? So he
Mhm.
actually had dedication and he had care for that project. But I don't know who's in charge of it now, but it seems like they just like took the money and
I just do wonder because Christopher Tolkien must be sold now. But again, this is probably a Google search away. But just to speculate, I mean, he must be just really old, and I remember his son kind of hating him.
Oh.
And then I'm wondering if Christopher Tolkien is now basically in the throes of
Yeah.
mental, and then his son basically said, "Oh, what?"
Oh yeah, just to fuck with the franchise. I don't care. I
Yes.
hate my dad.
And also there's also the fact that I was reading up on this, researching this, and the Amazon writing talent tends to be quite poor compared to Netflix at
Yeah.
the very least, and it doesn't make me feel full of excitement if I could just say it just from glancing at all the
And
evidence.
plus, they're looking for their version of Game of Thrones. Like this has been news for a while
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos is obsessed with Game of Thrones. They're finding their version of that, and Lord of the Rings kind of seems like a step backwards. Like Game of Thrones is kind of like an evolution of the original, like Tolkien kind of fantasy style. It's more realistic. There's more deaths. There's less tropes, I guess, that like common tropes that you would find in older series.
Well, at the time, Lord of the Rings wasn't, as cliche as it is now.
Yeah. At the for its time, it's the most like revolutionary fantasy thing ever made, right? Ever written, right? But now, currently in 2017, it kind of feels weird that we're going back to this world when it's sort of like the tropes and the narratives that come along with it aren't really as forward thinking as sort of the Game of Thrones thing. I don't know, maybe they're gonna make it more like Game of Thrones, which is gonna be weird because it's not gonna feel like Lord of the Rings, but maybe they're gonna
well, that would be pretty terrible because again, to bring the horrible way of describing things, like Lord of the Rings is definitely like a modernist type work where Game of Thrones is definitely postmodern. They both contradict one another. So if you introduce like that kind of nihilist mentality into Lord of the Rings, it's just
I'm just waiting for Hobbit Tyrion to come out, start making sex jokes.
Yeah, look, if I think they can, this is directly savable if they just adapt Silmarillion. I realize it's unreadable. It's unreadable. Yes, I'll agree. But if you look up the what are they called, the compacted notes, the abridged notes, if you look at it's actually quite a good story. It's actually full of all.
But that's the thing, though. I don't know. From what it sounds like we don't know what the end product's going to be. We don't know who's going to be hired or anything. We don't know nothing. It's our job to speculate, right? At this point, and it's 100% speculation. But just from what we've heard about what Jeff Bezos wants, that I don't think they're going to try and be faithful at all. I think they're just going to try and Game of Thrones it up, So expect a lot of nude scenes and a lot of backstabbing and intrigue.
Jeez.
But
no,
and witty hobbits. So look for that.
If you make Silmarillion now, you probably won't win an Emmy because I think you have to do something else to win an Emmy. Like you have to follow basically the group think if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So there's no incentive to do that commercially because I can see that not doing well. There's no incentive to do that for what's the word, awards, because just I don't think they'll get awards. So just I see a Game of Thrones copy, to be honest. That's probably what the money's.
And that's probably the worst thing you can do because like you always want to do something different, and sometimes going back is different, going retro is different. Stranger Things would probably be a perfect example. But you have to be true to that particular subject. You have to make it feel like a Lord of the Rings show. I don't know. But we'll see. One show that kind of is in that similar vein is Star Trek Discovery, believe it or not, where we're more or less have a new show and they're kind of like, adding a little bit of action and it's sort of its own thing. And whether that is successful or not is yet to be seen. But how do you feel about the last 4 or 5 episodes? Because we haven't talked about this since, was it episode 6 or 5? Where did we leave off last time?
5 or 6, yeah. I feel pretty good. I definitely matured from that. This show is a bit shit to I want them to succeed. Like go little show, go. Because it does it. It just but I think some episodes, like the episode I saw directly after what we talked about before, where the Admiral was captured, I thought that was kind of dumb. And where the Admiral was just like the Admiral's threatening to throw Lorca out of Starfleet or whatever, and then he's like, I will trap her on a world at the mercy of the Klingons to keep my job.
The plot there was definitely just trying to show the depths of what Lorca will do, as opposed to making sense from what the Admiral was thinking. I mean, because it was obviously like a stupid move for her to go there alone. Mm-hmm. Like, did she have like one guard or like a red shirt?
She had 2 guards, but like they were surrounded by Klingons.
Yeah. So I mean, it was definitely a dumb move, but it was more to, I think, done for the sake of his character development, just to show us like, okay, no matter how nice he is, no matter how kind he may seem in his motives, if he doesn't get what he wants, he's gonna pull the dick move.
His character didn't develop, and basically by that, again, we're skipping to the final episode. Like the Admiral was basically cognizant and didn't say he abandoned me in the world, get him away.
Yeah, they didn't talk about that. Did she just go on and just pretend it didn't happen? I mean,
Pretty much, yeah.
because like even at the end when he's talking to Stamets and he's like trying to convince him to do the 133 jumps, and he's trying to like appeal to his sense of exploration, to that the sense of discovery, and that we're going to be doing good, and also like that we're going to save trillions of lives. In the end that if Stamets still said no, he would have forced him to do it somehow.
Yeah.
Like he starts out with a carrot, but at some point he's going to use the stick, because that's just who he is. It's like a trope at this point where he's this guy. He'll do whatever it takes, and so.
But the best way of executing that is always doing it nuanced. Otherwise, if you can't use all your cards in one episode,
Yeah.
You've got to. They've always got to do the most conservative thing, and then if they're pushed a little bit more, they do something else. And then you have to get to the point where is he going to risk his Starfleet career to do something evil? And he basically did that in the Admiral episode, and it made the episode just like, oh, I'm just going to ignore the episode for the sake of.
He basically dialed it up to 11 in that episode, so later on it loses its impact, right?
Yeah,
because you already know that, like with Stamets, there was never a question that he was gonna like force him to do it. Like you knew, because what he did with the Admiral, that he would go to any lengths at that point. So there was no sort of conflict within him, right? It was less nuanced. We know what he is, and so I get what you mean from that.
Yeah. And then after the episode was what's the episode like? It was a bit of a guilty pleasure. Was the time loop episode?
Oh yeah. Those are always good.
Yeah, and where he's basically just trying to learn as much as possible. I felt like it ended not in the best way. Like the show, that episode was actually written by a Star Trek veteran actually called Joe Minosky. He used to write a lot of Voyager episodes, so there's always a little bit more meat in those episodes. But I enjoyed seeing that, and enjoyed seeing all the characters, how they react to.
Yeah, I liked it. I did feel as if the characters toward the end, I mean, obviously they probably just cut it out, but I felt like they were acting as if they were doing all the jumps with him. Like Stamets obviously has lived all these time loops episodes over and over again, so he's, sort of confident in what's going to happen next. He already knows what to do, but for all the other people who are stuck in the time loop, they're all living this out the first time, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like toward the end, they had that conviction, they had that confidence in what they're doing as well, as if they were experiencing the same thing Stamets was. And that felt a little bit off to me. Like, it should only be him. He should be the only one that should have full conviction every time around. Everybody else should be still kind of like a little bit off about what's going on, because they're experiencing it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I didn't mind that because they were Starfleet, and it's kind of like they're always they're supposedly trained to deal with something odd as soon as possible. And generally, but I think some of the reasoning, like, the heat, like, I love you, but I can't tell you because of my feelings, or it's like sometimes these people act like children. So like for example, in the final episode, when what's his name? I can't remember his name. Taylor? Is that Tyler? Is that the tactical guy's name?
The guy with the beard. The guy who was tortured.
Yeah. And he basically told what's her name? Burnham. Jeez. That he basically had a relationship with the Klingon. I expected her to storm out, because that was the tone of the show up until then. That these people react to each other like teenagers, and so.
Well, it was basically like a rape thing, right? He was raped, right? So it was more of just like, I mean, she wasn't gonna storm out because he's a victim. So it's not like he was like having consensual.
No, but I think he was saying there was some voluntary element to it or something or other. Like there was a choice, but I think there's something else going on there as well at the same time.
Yeah, they haven't really touched on what exactly the Klingon did to her, because I mean we're dealing with some kind of like mind fuckery or something. I don't know, but I don't think he's a double agent or anything like that. I don't think there's anything willing as far as him, if he does end up like helping the Klingons. I don't think there's anything like consciously.
I think he is a sleeper agent. I think he's fucked.
Are you sure? Because like none of his reactions were made in the presence of others. Like when he was saying like, "What did you do to me?" to the Klingon, like he was the only one there. And when he was like, attacking her, beating her, when left the burn on her face, or no, he didn't leave a burn. Someone shot her. It was
yeah, he did basically fire the thing in front of her face.
Yeah, but there was that rage there from being like a victim of like rape and torture and just like PTSD and stuff like that. So like all of his emotions have so far felt real and not for show for other people. So I don't know. I think it's unconscious at this point. But well, I mean, we'll see. And there's definitely something weird going on there.
I think, yeah, I do think there's something going on. But in terms of back to the time loop episode, I felt like that was really good. But I felt like Mud's fate was not the right fate for someone who murdered people over and over again, causing so much pain.
Oh yeah, they kind of like brushed it off as something comedic, like exit, when in reality, I mean, this is a killer. This is a horrible person, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, he's Dwight Schrute, so I don't know. So it's hard to divorce that celebrity from the.
Well, I think Michael Burnham was going to catch him in his own time loop. Like he would be repeating 30 minutes of the same horrible thing over and over again.
Yeah, that would be poetic.
But no, you just have this weird, awkward, like, oh, I'm a weapon, so you can't leave my beautiful daughter ever again. Oh no. What a horrible fate. He basically loves her. I think he loves her. I think he actually does love her, but he doesn't want to be chained down, but now he has to be quote unquote chained down, which he can leave at any time he wants because he's a criminal who kills lots of people. That's his fate. And he basically just go back to him because that guy seems completely, forgiving. I mean, the tone of the episode was on tone until that point where it became a bit silly.
Yeah. Although in fairness, they didn't actually experience any of the like killing that he did. It was only Stamets who saw it, right? So
I don't know. When you do moral things in shows, is it like resolution scene? Like when some character is punished for what they did, is it because of the consequences they did, or is it because of the morals they've been carrying themselves with? So there might have not been consequences to him murdering, but he intended to kill as many people as possible.
But he wasn't intending to kill anybody, right? He was just doing it for fun, right? Like his intention was to steal the spore drive and get off the ship, right? Or hail the Klingons.
But I think he intended a poor fate for the rest of the crew. I don't really think if the crew got tortured by Klingons.
Yeah,
I don't think he would think twice about it.
I mean, I also think it's a little bit different if like the people actually died and then you're grieving over these people and it's just like you experience that loss, but maybe for this crew, because I mean they didn't actually experience any of it firsthand or his terror firsthand. From their perspective, he just showed up, Stamets told them the plan, and they just executed it, and then that was it. So maybe there's a little bit less of just an anger and need for justice from the crew, because in general they didn't experience
I can accept that, but I still felt like, and your punishment will be you get to commit to your girlfriend.
Yeah, it was a pretty dumb punishment for someone who is obviously a terrorist. A murderer, a terrorist, just an awful person in general, and should be a highly sought out criminal, and they're just gonna basically send him off to vacation. It's just.
The audience does like him, sure. The audience, I can see that how he's played, but he's not like he's basically, I wouldn't say anti-hero, but he's like a villain with a kind of likable quality.
Yeah.
I think if he was like caught in a time loop, and like a time loop which is like, how is he going to get out of this? Oh, this is awful. Like you basically just like him suffering horribly, but like there's a little tingle in the voice to get out. I think that would be that would complete the episode. But I did like the characters kind of playing, like when they basically worked out his plan and basically tried to con him. I liked how the characters were playing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like with Lorca, like getting over his anger and wanting to kill him, and
yeah, and the thing is, like, in order to keep the mystery alive for the viewer, they didn't show like the whole planning part of it, like with Stamets explaining. They kind of skipped all over that part. That would have been interesting to see, but maybe if they did it like afterwards, like they showed this is what happened, like in a quick montage. But yeah, I mean, I get what they were trying to do. They're trying to keep the mystery alive for the viewer, so. They put us actually in Mud's perspective rather than the perspective of Burnham or Stamets that time.
Yeah, I think that was quite clever. I mean, that generally showed quite good writing in the sense that they managed to play with all these different, writing, I don't want to call it, but like, changing perspectives and things like that. It definitely showed the sign of something that was quite entertaining. Compared to the next episode after that, which I felt was a bit, like it just felt lacking. I can't remember, there was a Klingon subplot, and then there was the plot with all the singing spirits.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you've forgotten.
I completely forgot about it. Yeah, that episode was just more of just like a bridge to get us to the end. But I like the fact that they went to a new world, because that's kind of what I associate with Star Trek. Is from the original series, is they would go to like different planets, and there'd always be a new adventure, a new alien species on those planets. So, in keeping with the theme of just, we were talking about Lord of the Rings earlier, just like maintaining that through line or that soul, that makes it what it is. I thought I liked that aspect of it, that they went to a different planet, that they met aliens, and that it felt Star Trek-y, more or less. And
Yeah.
I like the whole plot with Saru, where they were saying that, like, originally they played it like he was getting brainwashed by these aliens, but it turned out that what they had actually done is just take away his fear, and how profoundly transformative that was for him. And so I like that little twist at the end.
I felt like they could definitely make more of the whole Saru Burnham conflict throughout the season, and in the episode afterwards where they basically said, "We're now friends again." I'm like, you were never friends. You hate each other so much. I mean, if they just kept that, if they're going to do personal conflict between the characters, they may as well just keep actual personal conflict. You may as well have these characters hate each other, not hate each other, but they'll have times where they work each other, but they're going to have times where Burnham's just like, I'm going to choose to blow up the planet to save the other 3 planets, and where Sabu's going to be like, I'd rather just look through a microscope, please. So I mean, I'd rather they've just kept that, and there was some genuine pathos between the both, because both of them saw Giorgio as a mentor, but both of them saw a different person, someone who fulfills different needs for them.
Yeah, and especially because Giorgio obviously favored Burnham, and that like brings up feelings of jealousy and inadequacy probably in Saru. So there's definitely a good conflict between them. They're definitely like oil and water personalities too. So
I mean, it would be more compelling if Burnham just told like Saru, "Oh, you're a coward." If she basically just accepted her Mary Sudom and just was just some danger woman who jumped into things, and basically said, "Oh, come on, you got to accept danger." If she basically just was, the show's version of Kirk, or like from the films, where he's always in the brig for doing all these crazy things.
Yeah, and that's why I like the fact that Saru wasn't brainwashed, that he fought Burnham out of his own conviction. It's kind of like the drunk mind, sober heart thing. So,
yeah.
It's like the fact that he had his own agency when doing that, I thought was a good part of that episode. Although overall the episode was kind of forgettable. But
yeah.
What about the ending? Because I kind of thought that that this was gonna explain why the spore drive doesn't exist in the original Star Trek, is that they were gonna end up in some other dimension.
Yeah, I've seen that. I looked a few reviews up on it because I didn't particularly. I feel like I could see the ending coming, but I didn't believe they were going to do it. Because I felt like it was a complete cop out. I've seen so many shows. Like, I'm a person who doesn't watch like hundreds of TV shows, but I feel like 30 or 40% of them, of the sci-fi fantasy shows I watch, involves them basically resetting the whole thing. And being thrown in a new universe, and basically the dramatic question is, what will happen? Where are they? That's basically the only question in the sci-fi fantasy thing. There's no big twist on the circumstances. So, like say in a fantasy show, they've just beaten the enemy. But then something happens where they've been thrown in another dimension, and then the enemy controls everything.
Yeah.
And then the question is, oh, how will they get out of this one? What's going on here? And like that question lasts for about a day. It's not a compelling question.
Especially if at some point they're going to go back to their own universe. Or if they stay in the new universe, everything that happened before is rendered meaningless. Like, the one reason I feel like they're not in a separate dimension is because we still haven't resolved the loose thread with Takuvma's successor. What was his name? Fuck. I forget.
Fuck, yeah. No, I think Fuck is the guy. I think that he's the security guy.
The security guy?
Or I don't know.
No, because he didn't. He wasn't on the ship, right? We had to torture the lady Klingon. She was on the ship. We have all the other main characters that we care about. They're on the ship. So if they get all transported to another dimension, the show still works. But there's still that one loose thread, right? Like, what happens with him? Even if he has another partner in this mirror dimension, it's not going to be the same guy, right? So there's like a little bit of a loose thread where I feel like maybe it's still the same universe. I don't know.
What they said, they were basically in some whole other zone, and this entire premise became old after Lost in Space's first episode.
Yeah.
So, like, but there's ways how you do it. You have people who don't know where they are. Your mortal enemy, a member of your mortal enemy, is on the ship, and maybe it may influence you without your support structure. And I mean, that's how you play these premises. But like, I felt like it was them just like I felt it happening during the episode. I felt like, something's going to happen. They're going to go to some dimension where they can't contact Starfleet. It's going to happen. I felt that throughout the episode. The episode was quite good because there was a lot of tension going on, where you just didn't know what was going to happen because there were so many, I don't know, incomplete conflicts that. But one of the feelings was, they're not going to do that. They're not going to, throw them to the other side of the universe. Please don't do that. That would be the worst thing, because there's so much stuff to be left to be done here, and you have to have conviction in your story. But nope, they did it. So.
Well, it could be a different time. It might not be a different space. We don't know yet. I mean, it might be same dimension later in the future. I mean, that's another possibility. But I feel like the conflict with the Klingons hasn't ended yet, so where they could leave and go to a different universe. Because then what was the point of all that, right? So I mean, there was no resolution on that front. So I mean, I've seen shows where there's like a fish out of water element, you end up in a different universe, but the bad guy always comes with you, right? So then he could fuck up the other universe too, and then you're there to kind of save both sides. I don't know, but we'll see. So you think it's another dimension that they're in right now?
They could be. It doesn't really matter. They could be in another dimension. They could be in a different time. They could be the other side of the universe.
The point is, it sucks.
It sucks. Yeah, because these characters can't. They're not like Star Trek Voyager, where everyone is designed to react to this. These characters are kind of like a watercolor painting. If you look too close, it's just a blurry mess. But if you're far away, there's some semblance of a picture, some entertaining, some compelling picture. But if you're too close, it's just like these characters don't stand up to scrutiny. They're meant to be, drive-bys. They're just they're meant to be. Where with Star Trek Voyager, admittedly, as that show is, I think that show might be a little less well written than this one. The characters were designed for you to sort of sit in a scene, watching Janeway or whoever have coffee, talking about some fake moral decision. So like with here, it's like I can't really imagine Lorca and Burnham sitting around talking about stuff, or Sabu and Burnham talking. Everyone reacts to things in a hyper way, so it's like, so it's like, I mean, you see potential in it, I guess.
I don't know if I would say potential. I mean, I'm interested enough to keep watching, I guess.
Yeah, I am as well, but
I don't know. It's kind of a backhanded compliment. I'm interested to see what happens with Stamets, where they're going with that. Is he going to turn into like a villain? Is he going to turn into like some kind of like pseudo god? Or the effects of the machine, like what are they going to have on him, and how does Lorca and Burnham, that whole interest? Because we still haven't gotten resolution with them, because I do feel like eventually Lorca is going to make a demand and Burnham's going to fight back, because that's how he started, right? Her defying a captain. And it's going to be interesting to me to see that come to fruition, and to see how Saru sort of reacts to that, because he's sort of the person who sided with the captain the last time, but because Lorca is such a fucking like asshole about everything, I do feel like he's on side with Burnham this time, and that's going to sort of bring them closer together, and there's that whole sort of conflict there. So I do feel like that needs to be addressed before I can kind of put this show to bed.
Well, Lorca's a soldier. He's meant to be a warrior who will do what's needed to be that.
Exactly.
His entire good conceit as a hero, being a member of the hero side, is being a soldier who will do what needs to be done. If he's some explorer lost in some other universe, he becomes a pointless character. He just becomes an asshole. He just becomes a soldier that came home and shot up his town.
Because he's not going to be making decisions like, oh, we need this for like the war effort or anything else, because the war's over, right? The war has to keep continuing for him to justify his morally or ethically wrong or unethical decisions that he's going to make, or commands.
In every war scene Lorca's been in, he's been the most needed character in that scene. Without his leadership or his skills or his tactics, like every other Starfleet, everyone, every ship gets destroyed and whatsoever. Every scene, every space battle is basically Lorca being a badass.
And that really comes down to like the crux of the show. I always thought it was going to be about, or like what I associate with Star Trek is less wars and more discovery, more or less. I mean, Star Trek, it's called Star Trek Discovery, and that's how what I always felt separated Star Trek from Star Wars, where Star Wars was always like the space battle with Mary Sue's and that kind of stuff, whereas Star Trek was more about the exploration of the planets and living in this kind of post-progressive world where these sort of like tribal conflicts don't exist anymore, or don't exist as much, and it's more about discovering planets and sort of expanding our knowledge of the universe. So I don't know, that may be just though my own personal preference as opposed to like a criticism of the show, more or less.
I did like the last episode. It felt quite well written, but I felt like compared to the rest of the show, which always had a bit of an edge, this is probably the most generic sci-fi resolution when it came to the Klingon bad guy. When the Klingon bad guy, like Michael Burnham, confronts him on his bridge.
Okay, yeah.
And he's like, take her away. I'm gonna kill her later. And she's basically like, you got a small dick. And
yeah. Like she literally went onto the enemy's huge battleship and just like fucking was a one-man army and just beat everybody up, and then fucking teleported away at the last second. It was the epitome of Mary Sue-ness. So yay or nay, like, to this first half of the series?
Yeah, I guess.
Tentative yay.
Well, it's gotten to the point where I'm just like, I want them to succeed, but it's like it's just like you're basically cheering your kid after the race is already finished.
Yeah.
I
think for more or less for me, I'm just ready to see that Burnham Lorca conflict, and then just get the resolution for this show. And then obviously there's going to be more seasons after that. The show is pretty successful from what I understand.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. I mean, like the fact that the second season, I don't know, they don't release the numbers, so
yeah. But because of the success of the show, there's going to be other stories beyond that. But at least for me, that will be a place where I can put the book down if I wanted to, because I'm already invested enough where I want to see that to its end. After that, who knows? Tentative yay. All right. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Lastly, because Alice is sick and Unoctium hasn't actually watched Stranger Things yet, I'm going to talk about episode 3 by myself, so we're going to see how this goes. I have no idea how this is going to work, but if you tune in for Alice, which I'm sure most of you do, and her salty opinions, feel free to turn this off because you're just going to hear me talking. So the first thing that happened was Dustin has a new pet, and it's pretty obvious from the beginning that it's the sort of leech or whatever that thing was, a little lizard that fell out of Will's mouth early in the episode. And there's kind of like this Gremlins vibe, like he has this pet and it could like destroy the whole town for all we know. And he's really taking a liking to it. He's feeding it 3 Musketeers, which is kind of a cute quirk. I was kind of half expecting there to be like a reference like, oh, don't feed him after midnight or something like that, which would have been a nod to that particular movie, but who knows? Maybe that wasn't the inspiration, but yeah, cute quirk. And there's like a little bit of similarity with Eleven and her Eggo waffles and stuff, so where there's like this kind of 80s connection to a popular snack. I don't even know if people still eat 3 Musketeers, but yeah, they have this little connection. And speaking of which, when is Hopper going to give Eleven better waffles? Because I know Eggo is like her thing and that, she loves it, and it's kind of like reminds her of Mike and like her time with those kids and her friendships, and so there's like a connection there and it's special to her. But still, can someone hook her up with some like Belgian waffles, some like really good fucking waffles, even like some cheap ass like IHOP shit or something, I don't know. Just anything where a waffle maker was used. Like, someone hook a girl up with that stuff. Shit, I mean, granted, she'll probably hate it, though, because there is that sort of nostalgia thing. It's kind of like with video games. Like, you could have a vastly inferior game because it's, like, nostalgic and precious to you. Like, Alice is with Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's pretty much just like that. The game is probably absolute crap. But, Alice got those nostalgia goggles on, so you know how it goes. Eggos are probably the same thing, but if it were me, I would at least try and kind of introduce her to like some real good waffles, like homemade waffles. The Persona 5 of waffles, and not like store-bought styrofoam that Eggo is. But yeah, teach their own. And then the other thing was that 11 called Hopper out on was the whole soon TM thing. You know, what does soon really mean? You know, shots fired at the whole video game industry on that one. Then we had what is so far my favorite scene in the whole fucking entire series. It's a fucking basketball scene. And for someone who's a huge basketball fan like I am, this is my area of expertise. The same way vampires are for Alice and salt mines are for Alice. But basketball is my thing. So this is my territory. This is my time to shine. But yeah, the one thing that is a hallmark of every basketball scene in any TV show or sometimes even movies is that the actors themselves cannot play a lick. Like, they're fucking terrible. And this particular scene was no different. I mean, completely unrealistic. I don't know if that was on purpose, like an homage to 80s TV shows and stuff like that. Although in Teen Wolf, which is an 80s movie, they actually got a legit basketball player to play and do like all the street ball moves, so it actually looked legit. But yeah, this dude cannot play. The shirtless dude, I don't know his name. He's the shirtless douchebag who's new to the school, who is not Max's brother. He's made that very clear. We don't know what he is. He's fucking creep is what he is. But the other thing, in addition to being a creep, is he does not know how to play basketball, because there's the scene was supposed to be a metaphor for him and Steve. Like, he's the new guy in the block. He's taking over. He's gonna run the school, and he stole the ball from Steve. And he goes up, and instead of dunking the ball or even just like shooting a lip and slapping the backboard, like just a real fuck you to Steve, he does this ridiculously cringy move where he puts the ball under one leg and like throws it up, and it fucking luckily goes in. God, I hate people at the gym who are just fucking just. They obviously can't play. They're just motherfucking lucky like that. Yeah, this dude is like one of those dudes. It wasn't so much a fuck you to Steve as it was like just something that makes you like laugh and cringe. Like, how the fuck did that go in? It was more just amazement than a show of superiority or something. It was more just a show of luck than a show of superiority. But yeah, that whole scene was fucking hilarious, and it was basically the Tommy Wiseau of basketball scenes, more or less. So in a way, it was quintessential 80s without trying to be quintessential 80s. But yeah, that whole scene was hilarious to me. Of course, the big thing that happened next was Dustin introducing his little pet to the other kids, and that was kind of a way to like sort of gently integrate Max into the group. You can see that she's getting more and more included into what they're doing, and with that comes all these sort of questions, because she doesn't really know about the Upside Down and all that. But you can gently see her becoming part of the group, and with that comes like a little bit of like thawing between her and Mike, that whole relationship, or which was non-existent until this point. But we did get that little heartbreaking scene where the fact that they were bonding came at the expense of Mike and 11 reuniting, because 11 saw them talking and she got jealous, and it was all kind of heartbreaking. And then we ended the show with Will once again getting trapped in the Upside Down and following Bob's terrible advice of just turning and standing up, and you know that it's gonna stop the bullies and all that shit, and which might work against the occasional human bully, but not a fucking all-powerful Lovecraftian monster. It's probably a good idea to run in that case. And of course, the monster just kind of like sucks itself into Will, and it looks like he kind of possesses Will, which is might obviously gonna have repercussions down the line. But it's just, I found that funny in that Bob's kind of established himself as the staid, boring character who kind of is the antithesis of this crazy world they're mixed up in. So it's kind of obvious that everything he says is just going to be terrible advice and not going to apply. I mean, he's basically a muggle, more or less. So Bob is like the type of dude that if you're choking, he's going to like slap you on the back. You know, it's like, yeah, this will get it down, even though it's just going to make it worse. He's like the kind of dude like who gives you Q-tips for your earwax. He thinks it's going to take it out, but it's just going to push that shit in further. The kind of guy who would throw water on a grease fire, more or less. He's like the kind of guy who just gives you advice that might be practical and sounds like it'd work, but in actual practice, it just does the opposite and everything goes horribly wrong. But kudos to you, Bob, for trying. I mean, you're trying to make this work, you're trying to make this a family, but I mean, this shit is just too fucked up for someone like you, so. Things don't look good for Bob. Nope. Don't look good at all. But yeah, all in all, great episode. I think the Pollywog is going to play a central role in helping out the kids somehow. Even though they're kind of making it a 50-50 thing. It might be evil, it might be good, but I don't know, man. I fucking side with Dustin. It's all about nurture over nature. You could be a horrible carnivorous demogorgon, but if you're raised by the right people, if you're raised by a kid like Dustin, you're going to turn out to be a good person. That's the way it is. It's nurture over nature. But yeah, hopefully Alice will be back and we could talk more about the horrible opinions I fucking spouted out this episode. So talk to you guys again next week.